Welcome to Section 5. I'm Janice Lundy. I'm going to be presenting on individual cognitive stimulation therapy, basically meaning doing cognitive stimulation with an individual instead of in a group, as you heard about in Section 2. Also, I'm going to talk about caregiver needs and the next step, what to do to start your own cognitive stimulation therapy program. So, providing cognitive stimulation therapy with an individual, the basic principles of providing it with an individual is basically the same as what you heard in Section 2 with a group. It has its own manual. The manual is Making a Difference 3. And it was specifically designed to be used by caregivers and to train caregivers in providing cognitive stimulation therapy to their family members or to a friend. It was done by the same group out of Dr. Martin Orell's group out of the University College London. So who is individual cognitive stimulation therapy, or ICT designed for? For individuals who no longer are appropriate maybe for the group setting. For maybe they cannot tolerate sitting for the 45-minute session any longer. Maybe functionally they're not able to just tolerate to get into the group setting. It's also meant for caregivers. Caregivers benefit as much as the patient with dementia. The trial that they did, there's not been a lot of research yet, but the trial that they did actually showed benefits as much to the caregiver as to the individual with dementia. It showed the more sessions that a caregiver did, the less dementia symptoms that they had. Their overall health improved. Improved communication with the patient with dementia. Overall helped with having an opportunity to engage in stimulating activities where normally a lot of times people with dementia are not being stimulated. It gives them a structured program, and it carries over into other areas in their life. So to get into the key principles when working with an individual doing cognitive stimulation, most of them are the basic key principles that we already talked about in Section 2 with group therapy. It's very important to follow the principles of the therapy in order for it to be useful and to get the positive outcomes that you want. First of all, mental stimulation. We want to get their minds stimulated. We want to get them thinking and concentrating. And a lot of times you may have to tell them that they're not always their minds aren't being stimulated like they once were. Dementia patients often start isolating themselves after they get the diagnosis. So the goal of cognitive stimulation therapy is to get their mind active again and engaged. The second principle, developing new ideas, thoughts, and associations. That's really what it's about, is trying to get them thinking about new things instead of over-rehearsing information that they already know, but trying to build on that information and bring that information forward. For instance, there's a session where you talk about a face section or a famous face, where instead of showing one face of somebody that everyone might know, like a famous person, you would show maybe 3 and asking them who that person is. Instead, you would ask them, show them 3 different faces, and maybe ask them what they had in common, or what they might have be different about them, who they would rather spend time with. Just getting them to start thinking in new ways. using orientation in a sensitive manner. So at the beginning of each session, you will do a subtle orientation with a person as far as the weather, the season, the date. Instead of saying, what day is it, or what season is it, you would just subtly, and with an individual therapy, when I have done it with a gentleman, I like to sit in front of the window. So that we can kind of just have a discussion about what it looks like outside today. You might want to have on, I used to type out on a piece of paper the date, the month, the season, the weather, and then I would have a picture of what the weather was supposed to be like that day. My gentleman liked to challenge me on it when I got to the house. He actually, after a while, because you sort of do the same things in the same way every time, and the first thing we always did was talk about the weather. So he had a thermostat on his back porch, and he always liked to challenge me because I would have on my paper that the high might be 60, and he would look out and tell me, well, the weather, no, it's only 50. So anyway, to just do those subtle things instead of putting them on the spot to have to know the day of the week. And sometimes just using things like the season, like with the holidays coming up, talk about that and talk about, what they might have done. Christmas is 3 weeks away. Maybe talk about Christmas shopping and how they used to Christmas shop. Did they used to buy gifts? Did they get gifts when they were children? Sort of bringing those old memories and bringing them forward. So focusing on opinions rather than facts. So, and that is key, that you want to, you never want to put them on the spot to ask them factual information, but to ask them for their opinion about something. So instead of saying, who's the President of the United States, you might say, what do you think about politics? Who do you think would be a good leader? And you might show them one of the sessions that you might, have pictures of different leaders, not overwhelming, 2 or 3, and say, who do you think would be a good leader? If you were, which one of these people would you want to be like? So things like that, but just, not exposing their difficulties, but their strengths by focusing on their opinions. It also gives, they're no longer having those opportunities to have discussions and to feel like their opinions are important. So it really gives them a stage and a platform to be able to voice their opinions and feel like their opinions are still important to someone. Using reminiscence as an aid to the here and now. So we know that long-term memory is the most intact. They like to enjoy talking about the past, but the goal of cognitive stimulation therapy is to take those past memories and bring them forward. So for instance, one session that I like to do is with old cars. So I will have a photo, of old cars and or different cars, not just old cars, but cars in general, automobiles, and show them, ask them, which car looks like something that you used to have, your first car, and then you might say, how much did your first car cost? And then you might go on to say, which one of these looks more like a car you had when you were raising your family? And what what did that car cost? And then what do you think a car costs today? And if you bought a car today, which one of these do you think you would like to have? So just, we know that looking at old information and then building upon that is very helpful and helps them learn and remember new information. So providing triggers to support memory. So we will always have like a photo there, or there's a food session where you might taste foods and have foods of different textures. You may have scent, smell. There's also a sound session where there's different sounds, maybe breaking glass, sound of a bird, sound of a bell. So kind of common things that they will have to identify a picture with the sound. Stimulating language and communication. That is what cognitive stimulation therapy is all about, is getting them communicating and improving on their language. We see a lot of improvement on our group members that have, and individuals who have word finding problems. Their language skills really improve. There are sessions that are designed around that. There are sessions that, for instance, we do proverbs where they have to finish the proverb, say, the grass is always greener, and then they finish it, or a watched kettle never. And then you might ask them, then what do you think that means? So all of those types of things, they help build and on their communication and language, and we see big improvements in that area. Stimulate everyday planning ability. So we know that people with dementia often have trouble with organization, sequencing, planning, everyday planning type things. So there are sessions that really help with that. I like to do, we call it a house session, where we have a house plan and we have them list out all of the rooms, in each room of the house, what might belong there in each room. So there's a number of sessions that really work on that executive functioning. Using a person-centered approach. So basically just being where that patient's at in their dementia, whether it's right or wrong, always, never put them on the spot. We always want to work on their strengths, and try not to expose those difficulties. Offering a choice of activities. So you always want them to, if you're doing an activity and you sense they're not being engaged or they're not enjoying it, and you've done another session that they've really enjoyed, switch to that. But always, start out maybe, looking at the book, and kind of ahead of time you would always want to have, an idea about what you're going to do for that session. But, offer, if they're not liking it, they're not engaged, go back to something you've done before that's worked with them. Enjoyment and fun. This is really all about not just the person with dementia having, enjoying the session, but also you, and teaching that caregiver that this is it's something that really connects the two people and they can enjoy together. So don't make it too serious. The manuals, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but the manuals have 75 sessions. They're not meant to be a prescription. They're meant to be a guide. So you're going to know your family member, and so just remember to try to individualize it. Maximizing potential. We know that people with dementia often are under-functioning. So what CST does is really maximizing their potential. Oftentimes you will be surprised at something that they come up with that you really didn't know that they were capable of anymore. So we really want to try to help them in that way. And lastly, what we know specifically with individual cognitive stimulation therapy is that it strengthens the relationship by people spending quality time together. Family members just having a half hour to not worry about all the everyday things that they worry about, and really sit down and spend that time together and enjoy it. So again, the research is showing that family members who do this with their loved one, their own health is improved, their own quality of life, and depression. So, okay, so preparing for sessions with individuals. It's they advise that 3 sessions a week, 20 to 30 minutes per session. If that's not going to work out, if there's a week where it's very busy, or the person maybe is just sick or not, feeling like it, then, that's not a prescription again. But, we like to try to get in 3 sessions a week if that's possible. You want to consider the time of day that it's offered. And you want to do that when the person's more alert. I find that a lot of times that's usually in the morning, but whatever works for that individual and the family who's the caregiver who's doing the therapy with them. And just remember, the key is to make sure that the person is engaging and that they're having success and enjoying it. So hints for working with the individual. So again, you want to avoid correcting them, allow for errors. It doesn't matter. Again, getting back to that opinion versus facts. It doesn't matter if the information they're saying is factual or not. You can just kind of validate it and move on, but don't, that we're to avoid trying to correct them. And not asking direct questions, such as, do you remember? That's really hard to do, and we find ourselves doing that on occasion. But, if you do that, then just if they can't come up with the answer right away, say, oh, I can't always remember things either. So something like that. So just to, kind of try to avoid just putting them on the spot. You want to adapt the sessions to the individual's interest and their personality. And as a caregiver, those people you're going to know your family member and know what those are. Avoid asking questions that involve explicit memory, so factual information again. Focus on the person's strengths. Again, we really want to help them feel empowered by this. And offer an alternative activity, as we talked about before. If what you had planned for the day doesn't seem to be engaging them, or don't seem to be enjoying it. So just for the basic structure, and you're always going to try to do this in the same way every time. You may want to begin up with a warm-up exercise, maybe listening to music. Sue's going to talk to you some about different types of exercise that you could do, maybe some warm-up things. Specifically, she talks about yoga. Then you're going to have a general discussion, as we talked earlier, about the weather, and always you will try to have a news article or a current event that you're going to discuss. The important thing about that is to kind of look ahead and kind of decide on what you might have. You wouldn't want to have the whole newspaper laid out. Just pick one article, or if you have something typed out or printed out. But we want to use the things that you have already at home. Just to have a newspaper or a topic, and then just give a general a synopsis of what it is you're going to talk about. So that's sort of the first thing that you will do every time, because a lot of times the news is on the TV, but they're not having an opportunity to really discuss those things. You may have a refreshment first. You may have coffee or tea, and basically the idea behind it is to get them used to the structure that we're going to sit down, we're going to relax, and now this is our time to do this. And then followed by one of the main CST activities. And those, again, there's 75 sessions that are already laid out in the manual. So you're going to pick one of those or adjust it to what, something that you think they will enjoy. Again, following those key principles that we talked about. And actually in the manual there are two different levels of activities. So one that's more difficult. So you really tends to build off each other. So you will see that you can kind of adjust it according to what your family members' abilities are. So now I'm going to talk about providing support for participants, the caregivers and care partners. And that's something that we have done a very poor job of, especially in healthcare. We're finding that most of the time caregivers aren't even asked how they're doing or given support when their family member gets a dementia diagnosis. So things in particular that you may want to cover that we think are important is just kind of exploring the experiences and the journey of the diagnosis, determining the individual style of caregiving, and assessing resources and support systems. So exploring the journey of the diagnosis, it's important to kind of find out what their experience was. How was the diagnosis communicated to them? I often get referrals for cognitive stimulation therapy for my patients, and I say, well, what have you been told about, their diagnosis? And they'll say, well, nothing really. They just said they think he has memory issues, or they think he has dementia, and they want him to join your CST. So really finding out, how it was communicated, what the meaning was, what are they taking from it? Were they given any information about how it might progress, and where they feel, what stage of dementia they feel like they are, or what type of dementia are, and just really support them in that. But it's important to kind of ask these questions when you're working with them, so you know where they're at. Who find out who's involved initially in that care team that's helping them. I mean, do they have any help? Are they, have they gotten any guidance? Have they reached out to the Alzheimer's Association? Those type of things. And how are they handling these newly caregiving responsibilities? Oftentimes you'll find that one person, whether it be the spouse or one child, is taking on the bulk of the responsibility. So trying to find that information out. And determining the individual style of caregiving. And there's no one-size-fits-all approach to caregiving. Individual families are going to take on these responsibilities and do this very differently. And so many times, especially when it's children, they're also balancing their own families, their work, their own social obligations, and trying to help care for a parent. So it's extremely important to find out, how that's being done, and supporting them in that process, and validating what they're doing is really important work, and it's really difficult. And then finally, assessing resources and support system. A lot of times they feel they need to do this on their own. You want to find out, what they know about resources, if they've been connected to any resources, and to really stress the importance of that caregiver getting a break, of taking some time for themselves. And I think that's where individual cognitive stimulation therapy can really it gives an opportunity really for them to do something with their loved one that they can really enjoy together, away from those daily caregiving activities. Also, I just did a presentation yesterday, and someone mentioned, it's an opportunity maybe for the caregiver to get away. You may want to teach a friend or another family member, so that we give an opportunity for the caregiver to get away during the time that they're having doing their cognitive stimulation therapy. Alzheimer's disease is truly a systematic disease. It doesn't just affect the person with dementia. It also affects everyone in the family. The entire family unit sometimes causes stress among other family members too. So just kind of exploring all those things and helping get them to the right resources, to the Alzheimer's Association. If that's not your role, find out who does that. Find out, what agency in your area that you can refer people to for those support systems and counseling. Okay, so the next step. So what do you do from here? So I'm going to talk a minute about the manuals and how to order the manuals, how to get a hold of the manuals. There are 3 different manuals, as we've already talked about, earlier. the first manual, the blue manual, Making a Difference. That's the original group therapy manual. It has 14 sessions. It goes through everything that we've talked about, the key principles, types of things that you might need for the sessions, and the second book, Making a Difference 2, the red book, that's the maintenance manual, and there are 24 additional sessions in there. That comes with a DVD that's very helpful. It shows each of the sessions, each of the 24 sessions in actively being done, and it also corresponds with the blue book sessions that have the same theme. And then the individual book that we talked about, the Making a Difference 3, and that manual is specifically designed for caregivers. It also comes with a DVD. This is my favorite of all three of the manuals. It shows the interaction of doing the sessions from the orientation piece all the way through the activity piece with individuals. There's also a section on the DVD that talks about how to train your caregivers, and it actually shows them going into the home and kind of doing that. And I think that's very helpful to see it in action. Where you can get the manuals, you can order them off of Amazon. Especially carries the maintenance manual, the red manual 2, and the first manual, the blue manual, Cognitive Stimulation Therapy, Making a Difference 1 and 2. You can usually easily find them on Amazon.com. Also, you can still get them out of the UK distributor, careinfo.org. Additional activity ideas. Pinterest we found to be very helpful. There's also elder activities through the UK. You could check your local library. Just Google dementia activities. So additional information about cognitive stimulation therapy, the national website out of London, out of University College London, the cstdementia.com, and then here at the Gateway Geriatric Center here at SLU, aging.slu.edu. And so we just want to thank you all for your interest in cognitive stimulation therapy. We really hope that you will want to integrate this evidence-based program into your own practices. If you have any other questions or want any more information about it, please contact the CST team here at aging.slu.edu. Thank you.